Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Agentic CMO. I am Dave Lehman, your host, President and COO of Birdeye, and I have another fantastic guest this week to talk about all things AI, marketing, and Agentic. This is a podcast where we talk to people in the industry who are driving their business using AI and figuring out how to get ahead. And I am pleased to be joined this week by actually a coworker of mine, Adam Dorfman. I usually get to talk to industry CMOs, but I have got like the CMO whisperer here. I've got Adam Dorfman, who's got a great background in the space, a lot of focus on multi-location brands and how they continue to grow and exceed their targets. So, Adam, welcome to the show.
So glad to be here, Dave. Good to see you.
Likewise. Yeah. Adam, you want to just give everybody a little, I called you the CMO whisperer, but can you give us a little bit of your credentials and background?
Sure. Thank you for that. I've been called much worse in my my days, but I appreciate that. Adam Dorfman. I'm the AVP of Product and Partnerships here at Birdeye. Mostly focused on listings and LLM search. That's primarily where I'm spending my time. Also being pulled into a lot of other things too, as you all know. Prior to being here, I headed up product at Reputation.com. I got to Reputation via an acquisition of a company I co-founded in 2006 called Sim Partners, which was one of the first listing companies in the space. And then prior to that, I had started my career doing SEO, both at agencies for Fortune 100 companies, as well as in-house at large enterprise sites like Orbitz, Cheap Tickets, and so on.
You were the first one where I ever heard somebody called an SEO, like an actual noun as an SEO. What does that actual designation mean, Adam?
Search engine optimization. So it's people that go in and try and outsmart the search engine algorithms. When I started, there was a bunch that I was trying to outsmart, and now it's essentially Google, Bing, Apple Siri, and then now the LLMs are certainly a big part of this as well too.
Excellent. Well, Adam, I've spoke to about a half dozen or so CMOs in the space who are looking at the customer journey and seeing a lot of things change. They're seeing, how customers are finding them change. They're seeing, conversion rates change. They're seeing costs go up on traditional SEM channels. What are you seeing? You get access to a lot of data, a lot of customer insights. What are you seeing in this world?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of change, I think, is the biggest word, and interesting change as well too. There's a lot of FUD going out across all levels of all organizations, just due to it's a new world that we live in, and how are we supposed to adapt to this? And there's so many different ways to think about this. I speak to clients every day about this as well too. One thing that I can say is there's a lot of excitement that's coming along with all of this. So it's not just the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but there's all of the, wow, this opens up so many new opportunities for me to speak to my customers as well too, or my patients, if it's healthcare and so on, and to better service all of them. At a high level, it's been at least 4 or 5 years since I've been as excited about everything that we're doing, because local SEO had been pretty stagnant for almost a decade, and now things are very different and very exciting again.
Yeah, and like you said, that's a huge opportunity for people, right? Like where everyone's been kind of like trying to get 1 point up or whatever on SEO and battle that out of that placement. It's a whole new world and opportunity for people to even leapfrog if they do this right.
Yeah, not to get too weedy, but for the last 10 or 15 years, it was, well, if I tweak the H1 tags from this to this and do this little micro sort of thing, I might see like a incremental jump or whatever. And now, because Google's algorithm hasn't really changed all that much over the years, but now it's LLMs are doing things very different. It's like, oh, now I have control of my content. Like I can really control some of the conversation and the narrative that they're saying if I double down on my website and some of the things that I have more active control over some of my own content as well too.
Well, talk about that, Adam. First of all, what are the high-level trends that you're seeing as you talk to these customers about this LLM search, this AEO, GEO? I don't know, we could probably have a whole podcast on whether you're supposed to call it AEO or GEO. But like, what are you seeing as people are starting their searches on ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, these new sites?
Okay, so a few things to point out here, and I do have some data that we've pulled too that I also want
Great.
but to start off with, one thing that we're seeing is that if you look at the way the consumer journey has shifted, there is almost, it's not entirely overlapped, but people that start on LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini or even Google AI overviews, but then end up on a Google Maps or a traditional search or your business's website or whatever, it's very high. It's not 100% overlap. Google, I was at a Google summit and they said it was 100% overlap, but that's somewhat self-serving for them. So I don't know, I would maybe take that number with a slight grain of salt, but it's clear that it's not a single customer journey in a single place more likely than not. So just at a high level, if I was to do a search for, hey, I need to find a place to get my car fixed, or to have it serviced or what have you, I would go to ChatGPT and I might do a search for transmission repair near me. And a bunch of results would come up and I'd be like, I want to go to that one. And I would click on that one. And then I would say, well, I need directions on how to get there. So that would open up Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever my default mapping application is. So you can see just that in and of itself is a very symbiotic sort of customer journey.
Well, I wish I had done that this weekend, Adam. I planned a weekend away in Sonoma with my wife. Last minute, went on Claude, planned it all out. It was beautiful. We printed out this beautiful, old school thing. And not only did it say, oh, this winery is like a quarter mile from where you're staying, so we thought we'd walk there, but it was the 4th of July and it said it's open till 5 and all the rest of it. And it was closed and about a mile away from my house. So it was a long walk to get to a closed winery. So maybe I wish I had bounced back over to Google for that one.
Hey, those are the kinds of memories that tend to stick with you longer too.
Thank you, Claude, for making that memory. That's what I was hoping for.
Exactly. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. And we see that all the time. Whenever I see anybody send me a screenshot of any sort of LLM results related to this is what it's telling me I should do, this is how I should do it, that's saying this is wrong or whatever, I tend to be like, this is a good place to start. Let's dig in and see what's actually going on. So.
But are you saying like if because people are still bouncing over to Google, people don't have to worry about how they show up on these other sites?
No, I'm not saying that at all. And the way that I think about it is these LLMs are top of funnel. So you need to be visible more than anything else, so that you're part of the conversation or you're part of the choice. And once you're there, then it's up to you to make sure that you have your information in as many places as possible, and as robust as possible so that you're not just showing up, but that it's ideally as accurate as possible. And also for people that are going to Google or Instagram to get a vibe check on what your restaurant actually looks like or whatever, you have all of that content there as well too. It's a new thing. It's not replacing anything. It's just yet another new channel that marketers need to be aware of and optimizing for.
In how much overlap is there with traditional SEO? Is that we don't have to worry about that anymore, or you still worry about it? And then this is 5% more, or is it? What's that look like?
Yeah, great question. So that same travel summit, executive summit that I was at Google in, I think their Boston headquarters, they had a product manager, a search product manager on stage doing kind of like a TED Talk sort of presentation on the state of AI and how things are going. And he spent a good 90 seconds talking with a slide behind him that just said, good SEO equals good AEO. And the takeaway from that is the algorithms are different, and how the results or what is being returned to searchers is different due to the algorithms being different. But both algorithms, whether it's local search, organic search, or AE or AI search, they're all pulling from the same factors at the end of the day. So it's your website content, it's what other sites are saying about you, it's your reviews, it's your social accounts, and so on. All of those sorts of things are really feeding into all of these different surfaces where people are receiving responses. So if you have a really strong SEO strategy already in play, you're likely on the right track. And if you don't, it's a really good time to double down on it, because it's becoming more important than ever.
One of the things we've seen is people focus on their brand and making sure that those are showing up well on these new channels. Is that enough? Is that the first place to start? Like where again, we've talked to a lot of multi-location businesses. How do they balance that out?
Yeah, I don't hyper local searching and localized searching, it's very different than brand searching. What a e-commerce store or a B2B platform or something along those lines needs to do within LLMs is not the same thing that a multi-location business needs to think about. There are additional signals that need to be taken into account. The hyper local nature of how people search is very different as well too, and also needs to be accommodated for, or accounted for. So all of those sorts of things means that yes, brand is important. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you are wanting to find a cup of coffee near you, where you're traveling. You're like, I need a pick me up. It's 2 PM. I've had a long day already.
Here it is. I got my coffee right here for you for that.
I was going to make some, but I didn't have a chance. So well done. Now I'm just thirsty and jealous. So a brand search would be like, and let's say Starbucks is the one that we're talking about. Now, at a high level, Starbucks, if I was the CMO at Starbucks, I would care very much about, at a brand level, what is the reputation of Starbucks? Is it a good place to work? Does Starbucks have any national specials going on or whatever? But that's not really going to move the needle in terms of on-site sales. Yes, that's really important, but that's that by kind of brand authoritative sort of thing. That's really important to large mega brands like Starbucks. But at a local level, they want to be like the questions that people are going to be searching for, the prompts people are going to be entering when they're about to get a cup of coffee is, where is a place that I can get a cup of coffee, I can order ahead, and they have oat milk as one of the milks that I can get a latte from or whatever. So that's going to be the type of prompt that's going to be entered into ChatGPT. Optimizing for that is not a brand. That's not something you do at a brand level. That's something you need to be doing at an individual location level, because what you service at all of your individual locations might change. And even if it doesn't change, you need to make sure that the search engines and the LLMs understand that you have all of these at all of your individual locations as well too.
I think there's some report we just put out around the discrepancies that, when you look across different locations, that, most brands have big discrepancies between individual locations when you're looking at these at AEO.
Yeah, we have seen that. Oftentimes what we see is that at a brand level, they might be cruising along from a sentiment value. So if you were to go in and say, ask ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, on a scale of 0 to 100, how would you rate Starbucks from a positive standpoint? It might come back 85, let's say, or whatever. If you were to do that at each of the individual locations, you're going to see a massive spread of those that are really, really high, like a 98 out of 100, and those that are really, really low, let's say a 30 out of 100. So even if at a high level, your brand is considered very good, it does not need by customers and by the LLMs based on what they see that customers are saying about them and use in other places. That does not necessarily correlate on how you are doing at each of your individual locations. And those are the ones that you really need to focus on if you're thinking about this operationally from a corporate perspective.
Yeah, that those recommendations at that local level are critical for people to update that stuff. One other thing, just on this journey, and I want to flip the conversation a little bit, but conversions, like you said, a lot of people are starting online and are starting on these AEO and then end up on Google and then come to the site. I'm sure there's a lot that are still going directly from ChatGPT or Perplexity directly into a site. What have you seen in terms of the conversion? Is that working better? Is it the same? Like what's that look like?
It's TBD. We don't know. So none of the
Okay.
LLM sharing any conversion data whatsoever, which I am on calls every day with CMOs and marketers and clients and partners and so on, and our internal CSMs who are asking the same questions, which is, how do we know how much business my locations are being generated because we are showing up in ChatGPT? And the answer is we don't know, because going back to one of the earlier examples, if you show up because, like, if you're an auto body or an auto repair shop and you show up because somebody's doing a search for transmission repair, and they come across your business within ChatGPT, and then they click on the link to go to Google Maps, and then they go to your site, ChatGPT is never going to be attributed, going to get any attribution whatsoever. They're not releasing that data. You can look at your website analytics for how much referral traffic you've gotten from these LLMs. But the truth is these LLMs are designed to answer questions so that you never have to go to the company's websites. I'm not saying that they don't, and we are seeing a slight increase in traffic from these LLMs, but it's relatively small, which in no way is correlated with how important they are. It's like this very very difficult. So what we recommend, here's how we're thinking about this, and working with clients to try and start building models related to this, which is, okay, we are now tracking how visible you are, or how frequently your website is being cited within these LLM responses. Send us some of your individual store data and we're tracking all this at a location level. So send us some of your store data, revenue data, and whatever you're willing and comfortable sharing. And we'll start looking at building models and seeing if there's anything that we can say this is at least correlated, if not causal. Yes, you are visible 20% more frequently for these prompts relevant to your different locations. And we saw an increase of X% in terms of eat in store and business cash register pings, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, certainly not to be ignored, this traffic and this situation. And one more question I've been asking a lot of the CMOs is, that's the external world. Internally, they've got a lot of jobs to do. They usually don't have these huge teams. How do they start leveraging AI, either native platforms, foundational models, or software solutions like something like Birdeye, to scale their teams and drive efficiencies and outcomes? How do you think about, how the world of marketing kind of changes with these tools?
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like we've come full circle in many ways. And the analogy that I've been really thinking about, and over the last week in particular, I don't know why this suddenly occurred to me, is I'm getting up there in years. You can see the gray in my beard and what hair I have left and so on. And yeah, you're looking good, Dave. Yeah.
Still a little shiny gray, but better lighting, maybe better lighting than you. Yeah.
But we've been around long enough where we were both around pre-SaaS, right? There was a period before you would go to a website and give them a credit card or sign an invoice or whatever, and suddenly have access to this massive software platform that you and a bunch of others were also using in order to do something. There's exceptions. QuickBooks always existed and so on, but even those were loaded locally on your machine. It wasn't this cloud sort of setup or anything along those lines. So more often than not, if you needed some tool internally to do something for you that was very specific to what you needed, you usually had to build it yourself. And you would go to your internal IT department, ask them to build something for you, or you would pay a lot of money to a consulting firm like Arthur Anderson or something like that in order to, or Accenture, to build something for you and then maintain it for you, and you would get exactly what you wanted if you did that, right? It would take a while and it would be expensive to upkeep and you'd be overcharged for it, but you would get what you wanted. And then SaaS came around, and the brilliant thing about SaaS was you're not going to get exactly what you wanted, but you're going to get 80 to 90% of what you want, and it's going to work really good, and it's going to be way, way, way cheaper than having something custom built for you. And that is where the world has been for the last 30 years, 25, 30 years, let's say. And the really interesting thing about what Claude Code and all these tools are doing is now, with a little know-how, and if you just roll up your sleeves and start doing things, you can get to a point where you can start approximating what you want exactly again. And it's not nearly going to be as good as what the larger tools that exist is going to be. But this expectation of, I know what I want, and I now know that it's possible to get what I want, so you better get me what you want, is now something that I'm thinking about a lot. So the reason I came to this conclusion is internally, there's a lot of tools that I needed and that I need to build. And normally I would have previously either asked one of my engineers to build something for me, or I would go in and build a really complicated spreadsheet with a ton of VLOOKUPs and so on and so forth. Like, as an example, I have this forecasting tool in order to keep track of costs and expenses for all of our network partners and so on. And being able to model all of their different ways that they want to get paid and countries and whatever, like just a lot of like complications and so on. It would have been like a really complicated spreadsheet before, really difficult to debug and so on. Claude Code allowed me to do that for me. And it was very eye-opening when I started building tools like that. Now, what this means, if I was a CMO, is if you haven't started playing around with these tools and trying to build something that can be really small yourself, you're never going to understand what to ask for and how to ask for it with all of the tools and services that you're currently paying for. And I think that's really important because it's going to give you insight into what's possible and what's not possible. For us, the way that I'm thinking about this from a product perspective is we need to make sure that for all of our clients and for all the CMOs, that we're giving them exactly what they want. With agents now, with AI and so on, yes, there's the consumer side of things, but internally, the expectations are much higher. And it's really important that we're delivering exactly what our customers need. And they should be able to go into a large platform like ours, and all this extraneous clutter that maybe they don't need for their specific use case, it doesn't need to be there, and they need to see exactly what they want to see and be able to get to exactly what they want for their specific business needs. So that's very much how I'm thinking about things as well too. And I think would make sense for CMOs.
Excellent. Adam, one more question to slip in there on you. You guys are building a lot of amazing stuff around listings and our Search AI product. Which one are you most excited about to get out the door?
It's a trick. Like, I feel like I'm being set up here.
Like, they're all like, all your babies are all your babies.
I've been doing listings since 2006, 2007. So the Search AI stuff is a lot more exciting. But the cool thing is everything that I've been building and doing with listings is very much part of the Search AI the AI ecosystem. They're symbiotic. They work hand in hand, and they're very important. So you can't have one without the other.
Excellent. But any product or coming soon that you're most excited about, or feature you're most excited about?
Agent? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. So for Search AI, the reporting, we have so much reporting data now and so much studies. I have all of this data available, and the coolest thing that we're doing right now is taking that data and feeding it back into the system to make sure we're making the most optimized recommendations possible for our clients, and not just making the recommendations, but having agents actually execute them on behalf of our clients too, at scale. That's the biggest difference there. It's a thing to be able to say, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and then for a marketer to have to go and be like, well, for which location, how does this work or whatever, versus saying, you have to do X, Y, and Z, click here and it will do it for you. That's, I find, incredibly exciting. And there's a lot that we've already released and so much more coming.
That's way beyond just visibility on these AI engine. It's like, how do you actually fix it and what and where? That's great. So Adam, you're clearly an expert in this world. I would dub you a CMO, Agentic CMO, and that CMO whisperer, behind the scenes on helping people with that stuff. It's clear you know a lot about this stuff. Any single piece of advice for people out there thinking about, okay, how do I get into this world? How do I do this right? Where do I start? Like, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it before. I suspect everybody listening to this podcast is already using AI tools in one way or another, and more likely than not, they're using it in the easiest way to begin using them, which is, and can you help me draft this email? Or can you do this high level research for me? Or help me come up with some ideas for this new campaign I need to launch? Like, what are some taglines that you can bounce off of me so I can come up with something better? All good. Continue doing that. That's really important because it helps you understand how these LLMs think. I strongly suggest too, though, that you try and build something with these LLMs. It's much easier than you think it is. You should not be scared. I do not have an engineering background. I don't. And for the longest, there's a large part of my career up until about 10 years ago where I had this imposter syndrome until I finally realized I knew more than I did. But with LLMs, it's basically remove that entirely. Technical know-how is so much less important. It's all about ideas. Anybody listening to this podcast has so many great ideas. Just go ahead and try building something and see what happens. We have nothing to lose.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for another hopefully insightful episode of the Agentic CMO. If you want more of Adam, you could certainly see him on, we've got him on other webinars that we've done and some podcasts. And then we've got Birdeye View coming up September 9th and 10th. It is never too early to register, but Adam will be doing at least one session there, and we'll have other great guests and experts in the space as well. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.